This is Joe Bitar.
This is Ramon Robles.
And we talk to fascinating people about their love of hunting, shooting sports, and the outdoors. This is Hunting Matters.
Now we're good. Good. I was probably pressing the wrong buttons. I'm not too techie, so sorry about that, gents.
That's okay.
No worries.
I don't know if it's your equipment, Rob, or not, but it makes it sound like you have an English accent.
Yes, I am definitely from the UK,
Okay.
and rarely I'm actually in the UK at the moment, which is quite unusual for me. But yeah, enjoying a bit of the UK summer, which hasn't been too delightful. But there we go. We could talk about that a long time.
Yeah, I have a friend that lives in London. They complain when it gets above 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, I actually rode out to the office tonight and took the motorbike thinking, the weather's actually quite reasonable. Met two of my kids for dinner, and guess what? It started raining, so I'll be riding home in the rain. But these things happen. Luckily, I haven't got too far to go. So I take it you guys are probably in the Dallas area?
Ooh.
Houston.
Oh.
Houston. Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Said the D word.
Yeah. Anyway. Did my bio work all right? Does that give you enough? Anything missing there, or did that help?
Well, we'll determine that when we're done with this podcast.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good.
But folks, if you're joining us on the Hunting Matters podcast this week, we have a visitor all the way from England, Rob Gearing, who founded Spartan Precision Equipment. Their website is Javelin Bipod. That's Javelin bipod.com. I'm going to go ahead and give that out in case I forget that later. But Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure, gents. Absolute pleasure. Always enjoy a good conversation.
Where are we speaking to you from specifically in England?
So right now I'm based in East Sussex, so just south of London by about 30 miles. Go another 30 miles, I'll be dropping into the sea. So yeah, right down in the southeast tip, really. Not a bad part of the world, not a bad part of the UK. We've got our challenges over here. We could talk a lot about politics and such like, and hunting in the UK and the challenges we face, because I think we're 20 years further down the drag curve than you guys are. And quite alarming, actually, what's going on, and a little bit scary. But yeah, we can enter into that debate anytime you like. But
we definitely want to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you didn't start out hunting as a kid. You started loving the outdoors through climbing, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, so basically born and bred in the UK. I got into climbing at a very young age because, quite frankly, it's very difficult to get into hunting in the UK. I'm comparing it with the US before anybody critiques me on that. You know, we don't have any public land. So if you're not in a family that hunts, and I wasn't in a family that hunts, not living on a farm or not working on a sporting estate, an estate where you can go hunting, or you've got a lot of cash, it's very, very difficult for a young person to get into it. So there are segues in, but it's not as easy as somebody like you guys on your side of the pond, that you've got all that great public land and you can go and get rifles quite easily and do a lot of good things. So climbing was a good gateway for me. It's cheap to get into. You didn't need a lot of gear. You still had the adventure, you still had the drama, and you still had the excitement. And for me, growing up, that's really what my passion was. I got into hunting. I was always shooting rabbits and pigeons. I used to go and I could sell rabbits when I was a kid, but it was all with an air gun, a very limited air gun, mind you, limited to 12 foot-pounds. So I used to go around places like old graveyards, old disused, and use the gravestones as my protection to get the rabbits, because it's the only way I had enough power to be able to shoot the things. But I couldn't progress from air guns, if that makes sense.
Sure.
The doorway between a unlicensed air gun and a licensed firearm was a massive door that I didn't have the strength, money, or wisdom to open at the time. And it wasn't until my later 20s when I sort of found the right people, managed to mix with the right people, and I got into deer management. And in the UK, it's very different from that of America, is the fact that there's not lots of licensed firearms users over here. So there's quite a limited amount of people shooting a lot of animals, managing a lot of animals. So I managed a couple of estates, not particularly big, maybe 6,000 acres, but between 8 of us, we'd have shot between 300 and 350 deer a year off those estates.
Wow.
So it's quite a number. And again, our meat goes straight back into the food chain. So you can actually sell that game. So the estates have some vested interest to, one, remove the venison or the deer damage from the trees and the crops, but they also get a kickback in the fact that they can sell the meat to the restaurants and the pubs and game dealers. So it's different. Is it good? I'd say it is if you're in. It's not if you're not, if that makes sense. So yes, far more challenging. So climbing was my gateway. Got into hunting, never looked back. Absolutely love hunting, love fly fishing, basically anything that gets me outdoors in a wild place that I can enjoy.
It's absolute sense. Kind of triggered a question for me. So game managers in the UK have to manage populations because, like you said, there's not a large hunting population there. Is there, and you said meat is sold to pubs and restaurants and that sort of thing. Is there a big demand for wild game in the UK? And if so, why are there not more hunters?
Very good question. Very much demand for wild game. One, it's organic. It's not been pumped with hormones. I will always eat a bit of venison in preference to beef if I got the opportunity, and I often do. It's still challenging to get in, right? So when I hunt, somebody like myself, if I've got a patch of 6,000 acres I want to look after, I want to look after it. I don't necessarily want every man and his dog in there hunting that as well, because it's going to push me out. So people tend to be quite protective about their land when they get hold of it. I've done podcasts about this in the past and had a bit of kickback on it, but basically, if you're working for a farmer, you might do your apprenticeship and he might let you shoot rabbits and rats and pest controls, and you might work your way up to managing his deer population. But also people can lease those grounds out for, not fantastic money compared to probably the States, but there will be opportunities to lease ground and manage the deer, and then you can keep that venison and sell it yourself. So there's no one rule or set of regulations for it. There's lots of different ways it could be managed and done depending on where you are in the country and who you know.
Got it. Ramon, you look like you're contemplating something.
Well, just tons of questions flood in my mind. I mean, first, just if it's okay to go into the process of getting a rifle, because having been born in the United States and in Texas, believe it or not, when you leave the hospital, they give you a certificate to purchase a gun.
Well, it's a brilliant question, Ramon, and one that's on the tip of my tongue. I'm talking about this all the time. So the challenges of getting a full bore firearm are really quite difficult. And I sort of get some of it because obviously we don't have the private land. We don't have a massive land, but it's very, very challenging to get a firearm. First, you're going to have to become a member of a club, or you're going to have permission on some land. Then you're going to go through a process with the police, which is probably going to take, it might be a bit out of date now, but it's going to take you a good 6 months from the time you apply, put your firearms application in, to actually getting your firearms certificate where you can go and get a rifle. You're going to be interviewed through the process. They're going to ensure you've got a safe place to store the rifle. It must be locked. The ammunition should be stored separately. You guys will be freaking amazed at the hoops we have to jump through to actually just get a deer rifle. And then, of course, we aren't allowed to have pistols anymore, and we're not allowed semi-automatics. So it's pretty limited what you can get in the UK. The one place we're probably a little bit further ahead in a better way than you guys is sound moderators or cans or silencers. Yeah. Now, we got those many years back because the average deer stalker or deer hunter or deer manager, whatever you want to term them as, will do a lot of shooting. and they tend to get deaf quite young and quite quickly. So we got them for health reasons. And I do believe, and again, I'm a little bit off track with the UK because I'm so rarely here these days, so I might be corrected, but I think sound mods are going to probably come off ticket soon, meaning you won't need a ticket to buy them, a bit like South Africa. At the moment, that's a license that's treated just like a firearm. And now often they don't have serial numbers, so it's quite difficult to treat it like a firearm, so they're very difficult to trace. But it would make entire sense to come off the ticket because there's very little you can do with a sound moderator. And it's a bit like the word trophy. It's a sound moderators, silences is a bad word because they don't silence firearms. Right. And if people actually understood what they do, they moderate the sound, we probably wouldn't have to jump through all the hoops to get them, would we?
Too many movies.
Yeah, the same case could be said for when we have incidents in the U.S., people say, well, it was an assault rifle. It was an AR. Well, AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. And there's a misinterpretation and misnomer of firearms from the uneducated public. So it's the same thing there. They view those firearms as well as suppressors or silencers, whatever you want to call them, as weapons of war in many cases, just because they're uneducated.
Yeah, well, education's everything, particularly in what we're doing. And I think I listen to so many people talking about so many things that are ill-educated, and I'm not brilliantly. I know a little bit about a lot of things. I'm not a master at anything, but I do love to talk to people when they talk about hunting and go, oh, it's cruel. My wife, she's not a hunter. And when I met her 15 years ago, she said, oh, I think hunting's cruel. Now she'd actually say, I feel a bit of a hypocrite if I'm not prepared to pull the trigger and I'm going to eat some meat, right? That's the change, and I've taken 2 vegans out that I can think of hunting because I don't argue with it. I'd say, well, come with me, come hunting, and then we'll judge whether what we're doing is cruel. Now, for sure, things go wrong. They go wrong all the time. But if it's done well, hunting's done well, I think it's a far, far better way to treat animals, wildlife and such like than an intensive farm. And the meat, the result of what you get is much better. And actually, I don't want to make excuses about it. I like hunting. It's in our DNA. It's what we've been doing from day one. We need the meat. So I absolutely preach about this. I think where we go wrong or where we've gone wrong is using the words like sport when you're killing something. For me, it's a passion. It's a way of life. Sport for me is kicking a ball, right? So I don't like the term sport when you're taking an animal's life. Trophy is also a word that I think there's nothing wrong with a trophy. I think I love trophies. I've got plenty of trophies on my wall, but it's a memory on the wall about a great event, a great adventure, and harvesting the meat. So the word trophy, if you're ill-educated, can give you the wrong impression. And I think if we can work on those kind of things, maybe we would get a better audience.
Well, I got to be honest with you. When I think of English hunting, I think of royalty on horses with their English foxhounds chasing after foxes. And so I don't think that's what you do.
It's absolutely what we do or what we did. Again, the laws have changed around that. And that's a very... You think it attracts a lot of different classes, to do that kind of thing. And it's a great social event. It's a great day out. Am I a fox hunter? No, I'm not. Have I ever been? I've been to watch. I've never partaked in it. My daughters have done it because they're both into their horses and they love it. And those kind of things are what being human is about, isn't it? Yeah. We've got nothing to be alarmed or I don't need to make excuses about what I do. It's the way I like. If you're going to sit and stuff a burger in your mouth and tell me I'm cruel, I'm sorry, you've just 30 seconds and I'm going to annihilate you, with a sound argument. Maybe if you're a vegan, you're entitled to your views, I'm entitled to mine. But think about the damage we do to wildlife to plant all these vegan crops. You only need to look at parts of Spain and parts of Argentina where you've got these intense crops. Same in California, where that still kills wildlife, right? So nobody's innocent of not killing wildlife. And so You just dig deep enough, we're all guilty, right? And I am feeling quite comfortable with that kind of guilt because it's what I enjoy doing. I respect the animal I hunt, right? I enjoy the adventure. It's about what being a human is for me.
Yeah, it's those same lines of thought can be said for, there's a big movement, I'm sure, in the UK as well as here in the United States, but there's a big push for renewable energy sources. And the people that look at these wind farms and these leases and things and go, this is the greatest thing ever, we're going to save our planet for future generations. Well, they don't stop to think about the habitat degradation for all the animals that are living there and the thousands of songbirds and predators and things like that are killed on the massive acreage of these turbine farms. So it's, I just wish people would step back and evaluate the full impact of some of these things that they're advocating for, and to be more educated. And that's part of our job as people who love the outdoors, is to try to educate people. But people need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, look, there's these things that we want, but at what cost? And
but it's a brilliant statement you make, and let's just touch on it for a moment. Wind turbines, right? A lot of them don't even pay for themselves, right? They just make a few people probably rather wealthy, and they're very, very inefficient, right? Fuel these electric cars. Now, I see the sense and wisdom of them maybe in the cities, but not outside of cities. And we're still mining to get the products that we need to make the batteries.
Right.
And the process involved in mining is pretty torrid. And the process to clean the batteries or process the batteries is even worse. And what do we do with these things when we've finished their life? We bury them. Well, I would say to people, you want plant-based fuels. Well, what do you think diesel and oil is? And coal? Yeah. Come on, people. If you go back far, it was a tree, right?
Right.
That's right.
So it defies logic to me. I'm a big fan of nuclear, personally. I think ultimately it's the cleanest way to produce power if we do it properly. Yeah. Now, there's been some horror stories and such like, but if you look at the other horror stories and you weigh all these things up, I just think this whole electric car thing is an absolute farce. If we're really serious about it, we should do fuel cells or hydrogen cells. But electric, it defies logic to me. I was driving around the M25 today, and I promise you, there was a big green unit on the back of this lorry, a charging unit, right, for electric cars, a remote charging unit. It was a diesel generator, gents, a diesel generator. So we are using a diesel generator to charge these electric cars. I was fishing last year in Bolivia, and I will mention no names, but I ran into a guy in Montana, really lovely guy, passionate about his fly fishing, into the coal mining industry, based in Montana. And he said, Rob, we're burning more fossil fuels now than we ever have been to charge all these electric cars in California. But of course, nobody hears about it, do they? And he was happy because they're selling coal. So, you dig deep enough, and it defies logic to me. Yeah. And at my tender age of 60, gents, I get fed up with hearing about these people. Oh, this is brilliant. So how much have you actually read or studied on that subject? Right? Yeah. Do you actually know what you're talking about first? Because we're all 30-second experts. We look at Instagram, social media. Oh, I got caught out the other day in Oregon, and my missus, she has a pet owl. And in Oregon, they got this thing where they're going to start hunting these owls again. And I thought, that's a bit odd. Why would anybody want to hunt an owl? And really? Well, it was an owl that was encroaching on a smaller owl. And it wasn't even from that area. So it was moving into a new area. It was threatening the actual true species. But my immediate thing was, why are they doing that? But when you read deep, there's a logical reason. They're trying to protect the native owl, which is really struggling because this big guy's coming in and beating them up. And there's often a reason, isn't there? It's just people don't dig deep enough. Sorry, apologies for that. We've gone off track.
No, but no. Ramona and I talk about it all the time. You know, people that just read the headlines or get 30 seconds of information are not fully aware and informed, and they just can't espouse their opinions, in my viewpoint, if they don't dig deeper.
Well, Africa's the ideal example for that, isn't it?
Yep.
Africa's a brilliant example. I was really lucky last year. Was it last year? Maybe the year before, to go and hunt a management buffalo. Always something I've never really been able to afford to do, that kind of thing. I was in Namibia, had the most amazing experience. I was with Joseph von Benedict and Adam Weatherby. Absolutely brilliant week. Really two lovely, great people. Wealth of knowledge. And Adam Weatherby was taking a Weatherby rifle for the first time back to Africa, where it was a pretty special thing. Anyway, I shot this buffalo, and basically, I could only keep the testicles and the tongue. So we ate the testicle and tongue. Everything else was used by the local people. And I videoed the whole process. And the only thing that was left from that buffalo was the green, right? Every stomach part, eyeballs, the lot was taken and used, right? We can't repeat that in Europe or the States, right? And yet we're criticizing Africa for, this is, I met 3 British women on the way back from Namibia with 2 British guys, Southern accents, sounded like they came from me. And the conversation started, and this woman said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I've been hunting." And she said, "Well, this conversation's stopping then." And I said, "Well, clearly I know where you come from. Would you give me 25 minutes to maybe educate you or let you look at this from a different perspective?" And I wheeled through my story, basically. And in the end, she said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. We've been living off oryx all week." And I said, "Well, where do you think that comes from, woman? There isn't exactly Walmart here, is there?" Or, just the naivety of well-educated people, and these were well-educated people, is beyond belief, right? Because they read all these papers that have a vested interest to try and stop what us 3 are now talking about. And that I feel really strongly about. I get quite heated about it because I want my children to be able to do what I've done. I want my grandchildren to be able to do what I've done, because most people I know that do what we do, this is a judgment and I could get chastised for it, but I find are generally just more solid, rounded human beings.
Yep.
Than
I agree.
Somebody that's living on a phone or an iMac. And I'm guilty of it. I look at the phones and blah, 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 but get out there, live people, do stuff. And I always say this, I say, if you take a child hunting, he's never going to forget that. She's never going to forget that day. Those kids, you put that memory in and you plant it early enough, you sow a seed, you sow something in them, right, where they're going to go, "Oh, this is living." And that's really, I think, what we need to try and encourage. I think in some places it's done very well, and in other places it isn't. One good thing I will say about the UK is there are professional courses you can do for deer management or, bird shooting and such like. So you actually end up with a professional qualification. And next week I'm doing a talk at one of those colleges, Sparshot College. There's 3 of them in the UK. And the young people, the young boys and girls that come out of those colleges tend to be pretty on it. They've been through it and they pick the pupils well, and they end up with very good jobs and tend to turn out really well. And I think that's great. What you do in the States, I really love in certain places. Your schools, you have hunting education in certain schools. Brilliant. Bring it on. That kind of thing that would not happen here, gents. There's no way that would happen here. Something also that and then I'll shut up and let you talk.
No,
Sorry,
you're
guys.
fine.
Something, I came to the States and I had an elk tag, and I was going to Frank Church Wilderness. And so I bought my elk tag. I think it was $830 or something like that. And the immigration officer said, "What are you doing here, Mr. Gearing?" I said, "I'm coming here to shoot an elk." And he said, "Oh, you bought a tag?" I said, "Yes, it cost me $830. He shook my hand and he said, "I hope you have a great hunt, sir." If I did that, I could not imagine one immigration officer this side. They'd look at you as if you're an alien. So we're what I was getting at the start of this, we're 20 years further down the channel of where you guys could be if you can't move that pendulum back a bit. You know, we've made hunting so inaccessible, it's easy for people to not like it when they don't get an opportunity to play in the field.
Right. No, that's an absolutely valid point. And we run into those challenges that you do as well. I mean, I've come back into the US and gone through customs and things like that. And they're like, what's what are you doing? And they're, well, I was hunting in Canada or whatever. And I get the look sometimes. And I've had gun cases and bow cases stomped. I've had animals lost.
Yeah.
Even though I had the proper paperwork and things like that. So we do face those challenges. But yeah, it's from afar, we sometimes look at the UK and we go, well, why are they so down on Africa? And why are they so down on imports? And, if it's not costing them anything and it's a private, somebody's private interest and somebody's passion to go and hunt these animals in other countries and they want to bring them home, like you said, as memories, we sometimes see that from afar and go, wow, they really are tough on these areas coming back in the country. And I'm just curious, strictly because we don't live, eat, and breathe it on a daily basis. What other political challenges do you have in the UK as far as politics and hunting and the conflict there?
Well, I don't know if you're aware. I think it was last year they nearly banned bringing trophies in from Africa.
Correct.
And that was our former prime minister, a conservative. You want to call him Republican? It's why that instigated that.
Right.
She wasn't a politician. She had no authority to do that. And that very nearly went through. And then luckily, some common sense people got involved, scientists and such like, and said, well, hang on a minute. You stop Frank, Sid, Jim bringing their trophies back. What about the person that's paid for that trophy? What about the money that's gone into that hunting that animal? What about all the people, the skinners, the trackers, their families, right? What are they going to do instead? And let's just look at areas where they have banned hunting, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
And see what epic disaster results. Because if us three were in Africa and we couldn't be a skinner and we couldn't be a tracker and we couldn't be a hunter or a guide, right? We're going to fend for our kids and we're going to find whatever we do. So suddenly those animals become of zero monetary value because I can't protect them because they're not any worth to me. So I'm going to eat them, right? Why can't people see that, right? The classic one is people will say, oh, that rhino's been shot, or that rhino, if it's done properly, was probably past his breeding state, beating up the other younger rhinos. And guess what? If there's some guy that wants to spank $100,000 to do it, bring it on, because that's the kind of money that's going to protect the other rhinos. The trouble is we're all preaching to the converted.
Sure.
I wish we could get this kind of thing on CNN and BBC and publicly funded broadcasting channels, because that's the other thing that really upsets me is publicly funded broadcasting channels that truly historically did provide impartial information are now not providing impartial information, and they've got a vested interest to provide a very left field view on things, right? Yeah. And stop people's freedoms and rights and such like. And that, I'm afraid, is not sexy. And if people read the history books, they see where it goes. The pendulum never stops, and people they become extremely right wing then because they're fed up with hearing all this not sexy stuff. Look at the 1930s in Germany, and I'm frustrated now. I'm frustrated about things because people are now wearing badges about their sexuality and such. I don't care, right? I don't care whether you're gay, you're indifferent, or whatever. That's your affair, but there's nothing to be proud about it. I'm not proud about my sexuality. Why should somebody else be proud about being gay, right? Stop it. Just put it back in your box, right? And actually do something to be proud about, right? I've got gay friends. They're equally disgusted with what's going on at the moment. Yeah. And they're saying, and we're now allowing males, or I'm going to call them males, sex change males, whatever you want, to go and compete with women that have worked their entire life, right? Every spare moment to become an athlete. than to get beaten up at the last minute or outrun by somebody that's genetically stronger, because guess what? They're not a woman.
Right.
When will we start seeing common sense? And when will we stop this lunacy? Because that's exactly what it is.
Well,
Sorry,
no,
you fired me off.
No, it's valid. We like to get people fired up. And, you know, in fairness, though, this is the only way that Ramon and I will ever get our gold medal at the Olympics. We agree with you. Let's talk a little bit about your company. You've got a background in aviation engines, and that perfectly ties into building bipods and outdoor equipment, right? So you founded this company called Spartan. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm a registered nurse, so you know, people go, "What are you doing in this world?" But you founded Spartan Precision Equipment in 2013. So tell us a little bit about how that took place and what prompted it.
Well, it's a really good question. So in my hunting management days, I used to take guests out deer hunting, deer stalking. And I used to have a dear old Harris bipod on the end of my rifle. A great tool, by the way. Epic tool. We all grew up with them. They absolutely did what they were meant to do. And there's nothing wrong with them, even to this day. Just for the type of application I needed, most of my shooting was done standing because it's relatively flat ground. I'd probably use a bipod 1 every 10 times. And I ended up taking this thing off my rifle because I thought, I don't want a pound of metal stuck in my shoulder that I so rarely use because it's just so infrequently needed. Well, it kicked me in the teeth one day because I had a Swedish guest out and we got into a lovely roebuck and I had taken my bipod off James and he couldn't get a good purchase. And I said, look, you're not going to ruin my day if you don't shoot this buck. If it doesn't feel comfortable, just only you can decide, but let it go if you don't. And he said, I'm not comfortable. And I said, great, we'll have another opportunity, which led me to think I can do better. And the history of this is actually being from my aviation days. We bought the test nose of Concorde, which was based in Farnborough Airport. And that was the Concorde that was based on the ground, but simulated flying. So it always had 2 times as many hours and cycles as any flying Concorde out there, just to check for cracks, damage, blah, blah, blah. Well, when Concorde stopped, we bought the nose, we turned it into a piece of art, stuck it on this beautiful steel tongue, weighed like 7 tons, put it on an Olympus engine bearing, the Olympus being the engine that powered Concorde. And the design engineer put 2 clamshells around the bearing because the bearing was ugly to cover it up and turn it into a beautiful piece of art. And he used 2 rare earth magnets. And I said, those things are unbelievably strong. And he said, they've got 36 pounds of pull, these little magnets, right? And I said, make me a bipod that goes on my rifle with one of those, please. And he did. So that was the end of my genius. And now Spartan has basically gone from there, and we're much more grown up in Europe than we are in the States, although I think we're gaining steam now. I really feel like I'm getting a lot of vibes that I think America's actually waking up to this. But 8 years ago in Germany, I was told I'd never sell a bipod. Right now, as of this year, nearly every German rifle maker and Scandinavian rifle maker and most European rifle makers are providing rifle options with those little gunsmith adapters in.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so it's happening. And what's happened is my background's climbing mountains, very much a mountain hunter. That's my passion. That's my DNA. And the Javelin bipod was really built for me or people like me. Quick, dirty, pop it on, super efficient at what it does. Are there better bipods out there for other applications? Absolutely. But if you're in the mountains, that is the tool you want. Well, we've come out the mountains now and we're walking down the side and we're now getting subalpine and we're providing in that little adapter a host of other shooting support systems. So whatever environment you're in now, I'll have an answer. So I say, if I know what your sickness is, I've probably got the right drug to fix you, right? But make sure you give me the ailments right. Otherwise, I'm going to completely screw this up. So we've got our Javelin bipod. We've now got, I spent last year, I was up in the high Arctic with a very good friend, Ulf Lindroth, who wrote the Swedish hunting manual. He has a contract for removing red foxes where they encroach on silver foxes. And I'm a slow learner. He's been after me for the last 6 years and said, make me a flexible bipod. I want one that I can move really quick, that I can do prone, crouching, kneeling shots, because I don't get any time on these predators. I've got to be super fast. So we got frozen out. It got down to minus 36 on this particular hunt. That's centigrade, but it's almost the same in Fahrenheit about there. And we were after capercaillie being like the giant grouse. It's the biggest in the grouse family. And capercaillie means, it's in Gaelic, it means horse of the woods, because when they take off, they sound like a horse coming off. It's pretty incredible. And you hunt them with rifles, right? So you're shooting these things out the tree with rifles. You wouldn't do it in Southern California, for example, right? But up there isn't anybody, so nobody worries. And it's really, really exciting. It's like deer hunting, but for birds. The birds taste fantastic. They've got a really unusual flavor. I love them. You either love them or hate them. But we'd go out and spend days hunting these things. Well, this got so cold, the rifle broke, we got broke. I got frostbite. I got a frost damaged eye. We rolled a snowmobile, not rolled it, but got it stuck. And it was turning ugly. So we spent some time living off meatballs, because that's all we bought, because we thought we were going to get capercaillie. Never want to eat a meatball again. And we designed this bipod, just how Ulf wanted. We worked on 12 different compounds, silicon and rubber, and made this flexible-legged bipod. We called it the Springbok, just because it's a springy little shoot and support system. Is it a precision tool? No, it absolutely isn't. Is it a fantastic hunting tool? Yes, it absolutely is. And I can say that without sounding arrogant, because it wasn't my idea. I just glued the bits together. And that thing, if you're out and you know what you're doing and you spend a bit of time practicing it, is an unbelievable product. And it's cheap because it's silicon and carbon legs. So we don't have to cut a lot of metal to make that work. And last year me and Ulf shot 100 goats in two days in New Zealand off that thing. I'm not saying they all went to Valhalla straight away, but they all went to Valhalla. But our kill rate would have probably dropped to a third without that tool. So in the right environment, that thing was absolutely at peace, and it just did it. And then when we were practicing with that, another friend, Noah Lemaire, said, why don't we put two of these silicon bodies on the bottom, and put another one on the back and make a quad system. Now, quad systems, if you go to Africa, quads and tripod, but sticks. Yep. But the quad is definitely a game changer. 15 years ago, they started appearing in Europe. Now, pretty much every professional hunter, subalpine, will use them. I'm not saying they're a mountain tool, but subalpine, they definitely got a place. We've been working on quad sticks for the last 5 years, but I couldn't do anything that was revolutionary, so I never brought it out, because the whole Spartan family is we're offering something that hasn't been there before. That's my view, and I feel strongly about that. If somebody's doing it well already, why bother? I'm not going to tackle what's already fixed. So we made these quad systems, and I'm super excited about them, because they've almost got, just like the Springbok bipod, the Springbok quad has got a life of its own. And if you use the little gunsmith adapter in the front of the quad is held in with a magnet, and you control all of the real estate from the back. So it's super fast to use. And I would not go to Africa without that set now. If you're doing plains game or whatever, that thing is going to come into its own. And the nice thing, unlike other quads, which can be a bit awkward to maneuver and fiddle about with, because this is bonded in magnetically stuck in at the front, it's very fluid, and I can run it from pretty much prone to standing. I can push the rear cradle back if I've got to do a fast shot and treat it as a giant bipod. So there's a host of different horses in the stable now just to provide answers. We've got heavyweight bipods, we've got lightweight bipods, we've got more affordable options with probably less features, but they'll still do the job. So you just got to pick your medicine. Our challenge, and this has been a big one, but I think we're getting there now, is best explaining what we do. And being a little company stuck on the wrong side of the pond is extremely frustrating for me. I'm actually trying to get my working visa at the moment so I can bring Spartan to the USA next year. And actually, because so many doors open for me there. There's such an excitement, such an energy over there, where I think, oh, I need to be here all the time. And then I go and get back under my stone south of London, and it all sort of steams out again. I get back and it spools up. So I think bringing Spartan to the USA is not a nice to have for us. It's absolutely essential if we're going to do what we want to do with this business, which is ultimately grow it to a bigger, like an ecosystem for support. People spend a fortune on their rifles. They spend a fortune on their optics. What about the soft body tissue, right? That has to hold these systems and make sure we get that shot as good as we can make it. And that's my DNA. That's where I come into it. I'm not nerdy on calibers. I'm not nerdy on there's so many good rifles out there. I've seen people shoot $500 rifles, Mossberg and Ruger, amazing. They'll all do it now. They're all good.
Yeah.
Right. But you can have your $10,000 rifle. That's absolutely fine. It's going to do it with a bit more finesse. But the cheap stuff just does it as well. I want to be able to provide systems now that are affordable for those people with the $500 rifles to be able to do the same thing. And that's where the Springbok range comes into its own.
Yeah, I'm going to give the website out again. It's javelinbipod.com. That's JAVELIN bipod.com. I'm actually looking at it right now. And you guys, being a fairly experienced hunter and shooter, I can look at some of the design and I can see that it's been tried, and tested and revamped. And there's a lot of little intricacies that, most of the general public wouldn't recognize. But this Magna Switch attachment system that you got is so quick on and quick off. I'm guessing that's what you're talking about as far as the being founded in the rare earth magnet.
Yeah, there's
system.
That's absolutely right. It's very fast. It's very adaptable. It's Lego for the shooter. Every body that you'll look on that website, every tripod body, quad system, bipod, they all share the same thread. So you can pretty much swap any leg with any body. You can make what you need, right? And in time to come, I'd love to be able to go, you buy that body, you buy those legs. We're just not big enough to do it now, where you can build exactly what you want. So we build the assemblies for you and make sure we've got it right. But I think over time, it would be great to go, your bipod requirement, Joe, might be different to somebody else's. So I'm going to have that bipod body and I like those legs because you're doing different applications. And so you're investing in a system, a modular system that you can add or take away from. There's a lot of very clever people that have helped get Spartan where it is today. As I say, I'm the glue pot. I might be the mad inventor. My advantage is I spend a lot of time outside. So I'm not like an engineer per se in a machine shop. I'm living and breathing it. So I'll be either in Bolivia, Mongolia, Arctic. Chances are I've done it, right? And at 60, I've been around the drag curve a few times. And that's why if I was 30 years old, gents, I say this all the time, I might have a very different driver. Of course, we want to make money. We want to be successful business. We want to thrive. But my passion is making those products as good as we can get them. And if I could do it better, I would, right? Yeah. And so that is what I'm absolutely trying to do.
And the thing is, a lot of people don't think about it. Shooting wrists, shooting supports, bipods, tripods. Let's use your example: $10,000 rifle, $400 quad stick or bipod from Spartan. Guess what's probably going to be more valuable in a high pressure situation: the bipod or the tripod. If you don't have a good wrist, that $10,000 gun is worthless. Good shooting position.
Absolutely agree. Right. It's lovely to have a $10,000 rifle. We all like them, but it's not going to do any better than the $500 rifle without the right support system. The amount of emails I get, and I read a lot of them, where people have said, I made my 700-yard shot, I did this, my son did this, and I couldn't have done it with. That's huge for me. That's what ticks my box and think. Mm-hmm. And my wife doesn't like things that I say, I like things, I like them to die well, right? And you're not going to get it all right all the time.
Sure.
But at least if you've got 2 legs or 3 legs, because we've got that new little hoplite bipod out, a tripod now, which is freaking awesome. You've got the right tool. It's going to up you. And I don't need to sell that idea to you. You both know, right? Because we've all been there, haven't we? We're trying to rest on a packet, slipping, or I'm falling down a hill, get two legs on. Whoa, thank you very much. The gods are looking after me. Yeah.
So you've done a lot of hunting over your life, Rob. And I'm guessing you gave us one example where you guys almost froze to death, but is extreme hunting something that really draws you, or is it just situations that you find yourself in? It doesn't matter the terrain or the location.
I'm very drawn to mountains. I'm probably, if I'm honest with myself, I'm too old to do it well now, right? And I've done it, no, I would say not to a pretty serious level. We've got a few first ascents to the aim, and we've done some pretty crazy things. I used to climb with Simon Yates, who's a very famous climber for cutting his mate off in South America, but he's a good guy. And actually, if people knew the proper story, they'd totally understand it, but hear it a bit and people judge him for it. Extreme hunting, mountain hunting is where I'm happy, right? I'm far more concerned about the environment than the prey, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you said, Rob, do you want to go to Tajikistan, for example? Yeah, I'd be there tomorrow because I love that kind of environment. If I don't see anything for 2 weeks, do you know what? It's not going to ruin my day. It's not going to ruin my 2 weeks, actually, because it's the excuse to be there. I'm way past pulling the trigger, right? It's the excuse, the reason to be there to enjoy the event.
Right.
I always say this, I say hunters, often as kids, you grow up as little murderers. We all want to shoot everything. You grow into a hunter, don't you? You become a hunter and you think, and I respect my prey greatly. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. And I'll screw it up just like everybody else on occasion, but I really will try desperately hard to make sure things die well. And with the tools that we provide, we definitely up the game by a sizable percentage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think about that all the time. 25-year-old me was like, oh, I got to get the biggest deer on the property this week. If I'm, and now it's like, just as long as I'm out there, sure. I want to shoot an animal. I want to, put some meat in the freezer. But it's weird how your whole viewpoint of hunting changes as you mature as a hunter and as a conservationist and outdoors person, that you're like, you know what? I'm perfectly content sitting out here for 8 hours looking into the sunset, whatever, and seeing a few animals and learning about their behavior and activity during certain weather patterns as I am shooting anything.
But isn't that life in general?
Yeah.
As a 20-year-old, I'd look at that lovely lady. Look at that lovely lady. Look at those. But you get older and you go, I just respect that. That's good, and I'm going to enjoy the view. And I think we could learn a lot. We could learn a lot if we allowed to actually say what we need to say, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that now I worry about things, people not being able to talk or being. I speak to people. I can't really say that anymore. Say, yes, you can, and you absolutely must. And if you don't, we're the guilty ones for not allowing these great experiences that we've had to continue. Right? It's just we need to get more people out there that are not the people that are already doing it. We need to sort of. I'd like to take a few black kids from London that are never going to get the chance to go hunting, right? And say, come out with me and just get them going. And these are kids that don't even know where eggs and milk come. I honestly didn't believe people like that existed. That's how naive I am. These kids didn't know where eggs and milk. You think, what do you teach in school? Maybe a bit of home economics might be quite handy, and some survival, because learning how to cook and where things come from is just as important as doing your maths if you want to get on.
Yeah. Maybe an agricultural course, a mandatory agriculture course every now and then. Would be good. Yeah, we you alluded to it earlier. The Houston Spark Club Foundation does a lot. We're very fortunate, very blessed that we work with school systems that actually offer outdoor education, hunting education as a physical education elective. And those are the kids that we source from, that we take them on their first hunting and fishing trips, because they have, like you said, they have no clue. I've been out in the woods with the kids, and I had this one young man who had never been out of his own neighborhood and was looking at a stream, and I said, walked up to him. He was there for a long time, and I said, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What is that?" I said, "That's a stream. That's water that flows down the side of the mountain, and it comes from rainfall and melting of winter snows, et cetera, et cetera." And he was just blown away. He had no clue. And we take that for granted, that people understand where their food comes from and what nature is and what the outdoors is. And you're right. We have to do it. It's incumbent upon us to do a better job of educating those who, not just talking to the three of us here, but also, and that's something we try to do through the podcast, is maybe somebody will come across us and go, hey, who's this English fellow that's on the Hunting Matters podcast with a great accent? We'll listen to him a little bit, and you never know, you may hook somebody.
Well, it's great you say that, and I do that with the college students. I say, how many of you write to your MPs? They're trying to shoot. They've stopped bird shooting in Wales. They've been really hit in Scotland recently. Your future depends on this. And none of them stuck their hands up. And I said, well, I'd encourage you to, right? Because if we don't actually start voicing our concerns, and your very futures depend on this, if you don't write to your local MP, I'm not saying it's going to change overnight, but if they get enough letters, they're going to start to listen. And I actually got a letter back from our new government the other day, because I'm passionate about writing to the government and saying, why are you doing this? What do you think? What are you going to achieve out of this? Right? Governments need to do things for results, not image, right? We need to get back to governors that actually don't care about their image so much and say, I'm going to do this because this is going to achieve the right result, right? And I said, and your listeners, your voters aren't that stupid people. They've seen all this. It's like us now with private schools in the UK. A new government has said, we're going to introduce tax. We're going to tax the people that are putting their kids in private schools so we can make more money for the state school. Well, what's that going to do? 20-30% of the private school students are going to be pulled back out of that private school system and put straight back in the state school. So the net result will be nothing, right? It's just more people will rely on a useless, broken state education system, which is sadly true. It's a shame. But anyway, I'm a result of a useless state education system, right? I was considered a dunce at school, never went to university, blah, blah, blah. And I had a teacher tell me, you'd be lucky if I made a dust refuge collector at the age of 60. And I thought, wow, well, that really incentivizes you, doesn't it? Crazy.
Sure.
I'm really glad you touched on the schools, though, because I'd like to do something there. And we've done it with some of your schools in the past, and we've probably lost touch with them now. But we get, ex-test products, bipods and bits and pieces. Link me in. Link me in with some, because we can, they don't need to be pretty, but they need to work. But we'd love to sort of support those schools with the kids and get them a few bipods and Springboks and get them in there, get it out there. That's the future.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. What's your next big hunt you got lined up?
Oh, that's a good question. I will be in Macedonia in a few weeks, hunting chamois. I've never hunted chamois before, so I'm excited about that. Never been to Macedonia before. Yeah, look at that.
That's not a Macedonian, though.
Yeah. So, and this is a bit sort of dead man's shoes. It's a friend that's invited me, and you just don't get to this place. I think the last American I know of that went there was Craig Boddington. So if it was good enough for him, I'm definitely up for that.
Yeah.
And then next year I've got Tajikistan. Hugely excited about that. Might be in Russia with a very good friend and a Spartan, actually, one of our shareholders and a director, Gary Rapper. Probably going to Russia with him. I was with him in Tajikistan a few years back, and that was an epic hunt and an epic result. He got an amazing Marco Polo at some crazy distance off some new Spartan equipment we were testing at the time.
I bet you hated that, of course.
Oh, yeah. It was horrible. But somebody's got to do it. But no, lots of adventures. Probably get back to Africa again, maybe Namibia or Botswana. I get all over the place. I'm so lucky. I live a millionaire's life, right? And I'm not a millionaire. I've actually, but I always say I've got a lot of friends that are very wealthy, and they say, I say, you could do it. I said, I just choose to build a job, a profession that gets me to all these amazing places. Yeah. I will definitely be back in New Zealand as well in April. So I love New Zealand, and that's got its own challenges, but again, an amazing environment if you're an outdoorsy person.
Oh yeah. You can definitely hit some steep inclines there, and shooting down the side of those mountains is you need a bipod or a tripod of some sort. I was with a friend there that a Kiwi SAS guy, and he said we were on a real nasty, gnarly precipice. So I think we should rope up now. And I thought, good enough for you. I'm definitely on for that.
But yeah, that's real alpine stuff.
Yeah.
There's a few places I'd really like to tick off. Pakistan's one. I just think I've been to Pakistan, but never to hunt. And I'd love to get to the Himalaya again and do some hunting there. But yeah, anywhere there's mountains, I think it just adds a new dimension and just adds a new element of, I guess we all have got that knife edge risk element. You know, I'm not climbing stupid climbs anymore,
right.
And I'm not, but I still like a little bit of exposure. And you've got to think about things. You've got to slow down. You've got to make sure you don't make stupid mistakes. And that's why we do it, I guess. Otherwise, we could sit and watch the television, couldn't we? Let somebody else do it. And I've never been good at that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Rob Gearing has been our guest today, folks. Check out their website for Spartan Precision Equipment at Javelin Bipod. That's JAVELIN bipod.com. Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know there's a time difference for us, so we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend with us. And Ramon, anything else that we need to ask Rob before we...
Well, I just want to thank you and your entire country for David Attenborough, Monty Python, and Rowan Atkinson.
Oh, I bring them all back. They're brilliant. Yeah. But all banned now, aren't they?
Yeah.
You just think, please, some wonderful people. We got some wonderful. Our country's great. It's just the greatness is dropping away, and I'd love that great bit to come back again. It's
we face the same thing here in the U.S. Yep.
Well, you do. It's just, and I've been quite shocked in Oregon and places like that. I thought, wow, what's going on here? An alien was to land. But this is just stupid. But look, gents, I've really it's been wonderful to chat to you. Always love it, and always great. And look forward to seeing you in your part of the field. And
Absolutely.
we'll be doing some of the SCI Dallas shows and bits and pieces. So we'll be out and about.
All right, Rob. Thank you so much for your time.
Wonderful. Have a good evening.
You too.
Hunting Matters is a Houston Safari Club Foundation production, hosted by HSCF Executive Director Joe Bitar and Ramon Robles. Produced by Ramon Robles. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For questions or more information, email us at info@wehuntwegive.org.